I think in this way then, Wikipedia, the new medium, is actually appropriating the old modes. And part of the problem is that our students might be doing the same thing. So even though our students can go onto Wikipedia and we offer up these Web 2.0 assignments for them, they might be slowly descending back into an audience-only, consumption-only mindset. So for instance, I just had a talk with a colleague recently who asked his class of 22 students how many of them use Wikipedia and how many of them use the discussion, edit page, or history tab. You can probably guess that none of them said they did. Maybe you'll have a handful fewer there. What's interesting is that if you wanted to go edit something, you're going to be faced with this, which first and foremost is pretty daunting. When you compare this kind of nice, clean look, and then you get this kind of messy where you actually get the code stuff. Okay, you're not daunted enough by that, that's fine. But if you're already going to Wikipedia for all your information, which a lot of our students do, and that's okay too, why would you want to go and mess around with the layout that already works for you? It really doesn't make much sense. You might mess around with some of the content, some of the inaccuracies, but you're probably not going to produce a whole new template for that particular article if, again, you already go to it and you already like it. This brings us to the third area, which is the author of identity. This is a really interesting one to look at because this is one, I've talked a little bit about constraints here. There's a lot of affordances in authority of identity when we talk about it with our students, specifically on social network spaces. So I made a rare appearance on MySpace before I came here, and what I did is I searched for anyone 18 to 30 years old who lived within 5 miles of downtown Philadelphia. And what I'm going to show you are the top 3 results I came up with. Completely empirically balanced, I think. I didn't go search for these. The reason I think these are interesting is because Atkinson talks about using the authority of identity to talk about our lives as texts, that we are actually writing ourselves and writing our own identities. And MySpace in particular gives us the literal means to do that. So for instance, you can see for this guy, which I hope he doesn't find out I'm doing this because it kind of scares me. So, you know, he has chosen this template. In the background, we've got like, you know, a modern Benjamin Franklin, I guess, which is kind of like Philadelphia-centric. You know, that's kind of cool. But it's also like he's a baller or something too, you know. But it's cohesive in terms of him trying to write his life as an expression of himself on this website, which we wouldn't know since we've never met him. The second one is really interesting too because this is actually the default MySpace template. This is the one that everyone gets. But this guy does have something that a lot of people are starting to turn to, which is as soon as I clicked on his profile, it started playing a song. So now all of a sudden, I don't know if this guy's name is a DJ or if he wants to associate himself as a DJ, but in either way, he's writing himself a certain identity that even if I don't recognize him as a musical DJ, I associate this music with him, etc. You see how that can blow out. And this third one's a really interesting example. I think this is the clearest synthesis that I've seen of different aesthetics of expression of identity with the actual execution of it. So for instance, you can see that this guy has his own template, Straight Edge. His username is called Straight Edge, and then his About Me is all about straight edge and explaining what straight edge is. This is a perfect example of someone trying to write themselves as a text and provide a unified front for others to read by. I find it really, really exciting, really interesting. Unlike the previous examples I've shown you, though, these examples on MySpace afford users with their own authority as agents of writing their own identity. Yes, they're still strung by design choices given them by the customization website, so I'm sure he went to some other website to get this background. But with near limitless options, it's more and more possible that users could write themselves as unique original text, unlike on some other sites, such as Facebook, which we'll talk about in just a second. This does bring us to the final authority of language. Again, another caveat, Atkinson is using authority of language to describe the power of language to label things and the power to control discourse, a very Foucauldian approach, right? Bless you. So she was actually coming at it from a feminist perspective, where she was saying labeling someone a woman, a female, a girl, etc., as a certain authority of language, which we need to kind of talk about for the power balance. I'm actually interested today and appropriate today to talk about literally how is language used on these websites. Specifically, what are the prompts they give us? And again, how do they actually teach us how to use the sites? The first stop is Twitter. When people talk about Twitter, they often talk about two things. The speed of connection between people, or kind of the interruptions, perhaps, and the constraint of 140 characters. While I think both of these things are important and probably fodder for other discussions, I think the authority of language on the site is often overlooked. Specifically, you can see that each visit to Twitter greets us with the prompt, "What are you doing?" followed by an open text box. And if you notice here, out of the 3 people that came up on the stream just a couple days ago, only one person actually followed that prompt. The other people are retweeting things or just saying things or putting links to something else. So not everyone is following that prompt, but yet that is what greets us. This became really interesting to me and kind of a watershed moment for my understanding of Twitter. And that last April, I asked a group of college students, freshmen and seniors, last April, out of 22 students, am I right about that? 5 minutes, I can do that. How many of you know about Twitter? How many use Twitter? No, some of them knew about it, none of them used it. This September, I asked a group of freshmen, Twitter, same question. All of them knew it, a few of them had dabbled with it, but none of them actively used it. And I asked why. And they told me it's because they don't want to know what people are doing every minute of the day. And it's very interesting to me because this is exactly the authoritative language that I'm talking about. They're taking this site very literally. And the way it's telling us to use it, what are you doing, is something that when they see, they internalize and think that that's what they're supposed to do back. This was very interesting for me about how we actually use sites, specifically when we look at something like Facebook. There's two things I find really interesting about Facebook. First of all, you see it's what's on your mind. It's a different prompt. But what's interesting to me is that it's always followed by a text box. So as soon as we come here, we're asked to enter text, and then someone presumably is going to give us text back, and then we're going to want to go back and insert more text. And you can see how this thing just keeps going back and forth. It's really kind of brilliant marketing to that extent. The second thing is that the language of the prompt is very specific and would be viewed much differently if posed in our classrooms. Imagine asking your students, what's on your mind? And you have 5 minutes to write that down. Imagine on Facebook or on a class if the question was different. What if we said, what did you do today? Or where are you? Or what's up? We're going to have different responses for all of those different things. These prompts provide yet another view of an often invisible authority when students compose electronically and or online. What's interesting here, of course, is that on sites like Facebook and Twitter, where students probably assume they have the most autonomy and are free from authority figures like writing instructors, these prompts remind us that authority is still there, and the authority of language specifically still affects writers in powerful ways. But in the end, and especially in what I'm trying to do with my stuff, you always have to come back to this question. So what? In answering this question, I've come out with 4 things that I think are takeaways, both for you, your thoughts, and your students, but also thoughts about how I think I'm going to appropriate technology and all these different authorities in my own thinking. The first is return to Kress' beliefs that layout does change the deeper meaning of text. Beyond simply discussing visual literacy, we need to continue discussing the strategies and effects that default settings, templates, and layouts have on contemporary writers. The second is that we need to approach these new challenges and opportunities with an open, perhaps postmodern mind, that there are no binaries such as in class and out of class, or right or wrong. The third is that types of authority are always providing writers with affordances and constraints, and we need to more openly recognize and discuss them. And finally, all of these points can be summed up by having discussions that don't try to identify good or bad things about these situations, but just recognize that they're all rhetorically unique and all part of larger arguments. And I think by addressing all of these parts for ourselves and later with our students, we'll be able to more richly innovate with the ideas of tomorrow, while at the same time curating the text of yesterday. And that is all I've got. So thank you.